Welcome to the Creative Plan Podcast Network. Join us as we share our favorite RPGs, one-shot games, tabletop games, reviews of items, and convention panels, and other exciting things that we run into from time to time. Sit back and enjoy the show.
Hi, this is Kelly, aka Trixie from Ragnarok and Roll, assigned to Ragnarok Story, and Tilda Wimblewick from D&D Journey of the 5th Edition. First off, I would just like to say thank you to everyone for listening to our varied adventures, as well as for rating us on iTunes and rpgpodcast.com. If you haven't rated us yet, we would greatly appreciate it if you could. And if you're looking for more ways to support our efforts, we are now on Patreon, a great site where you can help us continue making more podcasts, as well as some special surprises for our patrons. If you can, please look us up at www.patreon.com/cppn. Every little bit helps. And again, thank you for listening.
So he was listed first, but you were listed second.
Okay. Well, I heard that at TusCon we don't use moderators because we don't need
immoderate. Yes.
We don't need moderation.
We don't need no stinking moderators.
Right. But our panelists called just to make sure you're at the right place. What if your book turns into a series? How to prepare for your infinite middle. Because you write a book and you think you're just writing a book. Mm-hmm. Right. So my name is Diana. I write a series of post-apocalyptic fiction, which is basically Beauty and the Beast meets Mad Max. And it has a lot of action and a little bit of romance because, you know, there's that Beauty and the Beast element. I did not start writing this book. My co-writer wrote the book, and I said no. He wanted me to read it and give me his opinion. I said, no, you can't do this. This is terrible. The ending is bad. It was so bad, I'm not speaking to you anymore. And that went on for about 5 days. And he said, okay, fine, we can change it. You can help me. It's like, okay, but it's terrible, but we'll fix it. And I think it's much better now.
Well, of course, because you're part of it. Right? Isn't that the way it works?
Yes, in this case, definitely.
Both were like 35 years old, finished a book, told their wife, this was absolutely terrible. I can write a better book than that.
Okay.
Well, basically, prove it.
Please do.
My name's Bruce Davis. I write fantasy and science fiction. I have 2 series. My Prophet Log books is Gangsters in Space, basically. And then the Magic Law series, Lord of the Rings meets Law and Order. Both are out from my publisher, Brick Cave Media, brickcave.media, small press out of Mesa.
I know I mentioned before.
That's probably where.
Yes.
Yeah. And then my 4th book in the Magic Law series, hopefully will be out in the spring, Silver Magic. So that's, I guess, why I'm here.
Okay, very good. And I'm Ross Lampert. I publish as Ross B. Lampert because there is another Ross Lampert in the world. We're Facebook friends. Turns out his middle initial is also B.
Oh, no.
Oh, well, not my problem. I had it first.
Okay, you're older.
You claimed the B.
Yes.
You claimed the B.
I did.
It's your B.
I
You may
did.
not have it.
Yes. So right now, these are my 2 books. The 3rd book and last in the trilogy is pretty much done. I'm going through my editor's comments now. And once I get the cover done, it will be out. I was shooting to get it out at the end of this year. Not going to happen. But pretty soon. It's close. And in the meantime, in my abundant spirit, I'm also working on what are now 2 nonfiction books for writers, which may become 4 or 5 or I don't know how many, because I'm looking very seriously at taking one of them and splitting it into a bunch of smaller pieces.
It's too big.
Well, and that's what's happening.
Right, and you want it digestible.
Yeah. And especially because this is on how to critique.
Yeah, our 3rd book is coming out too. Coming up soon. We're at beta readers right now.
Ah, good. Okay. Good. All right. So I can start with a story about a story.
Okay.
It's a perfect fit for this panel. this book was going to be a standalone. And once I finally figured out what the ending was and wrote it, I went, there's more to this story. This story doesn't end there. Uh-oh. Because I had no idea what I was going to do with the rest of the story. I didn't know what the rest of the story was.
But you knew there was more.
I knew there was more.
It was something similar with this when I had said, no, this is not going to work. When we changed the ending, it opened up a bunch of possibilities.
Yes. Yeah.
And that happens.
Yeah.
Can I ask you to project a little bit more? There's a nasty wine back here at the back.
Sure.
Of the room.
Or you
Yeah.
could come up.
Yeah, come forward. We got there's
It's not so bad
There's
here.
two things there.
No, not okay. Let's move forward.
Come up, yeah.
There's
Yeah.
a whole row of
I think
I see you.
that kind of opens the question
And
of
I'll sit in the front row.
Aw.
we're not going to ask you questions.
I never sit in the front row.
In your case, Jim, you might.
I always sit up front.
But just be conscious. There's
So
this
do
kind of nasty wine.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
can hear a hum.
It makes it a
up
little
here.
different taste.
Yeah.
Makes it
Okay, so
hard.
what were you saying?
I was going to say this opens the question of the difference between a series and, say, a trilogy or a continuing story.
Right.
Yeah.
I write a series. It's a series of standalone books.
Mhm.
They build on one another,
Right, so you can.
but you can read them
one.
almost in any order. And while it's all the same characters and events built, it's by no means a trilogy, a continuous story.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well,
what-
this is one of the things that I've learned over the years is there are at least two, and to this today actually I'm figuring out there's a third actual kind of series. There's the continuing story series, which is what this has turned into, where there's a meta plot, there's a story arc that covers however many books there are, whether it's 2, 3, 27, whatever. And that's where this magic middle, if you don't have that, you're going to be struggling to put it together, which is exactly what I went through with this series. There's also the continuing character series, where the character or characters, plural, are the same, but the situations they deal with are different. And, for things like detectives series.
Well, like the In-Depth series,
Yeah.
J.D. Robb, it's all about Eve Dallas and
Right.
Rourke, but
Right.
it's always a law.
Different situation every
murder
time.
happened,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
you could read any
Yeah.
of the books in any
Yeah.
order
Yeah.
and still enjoy it.
And now I'm drawing a blank on what the third kind of series is, but it's a continuing world series.
Oh, right. So like
Where-
you'll have one family for the first 3, and then maybe their kids. and-
Yes. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so each of those is going to have a different set of problems, a different set of challenges in putting them together. The next series that I'm looking at writing, one, I know it's going to be a series, so that's a good start. But whether it's going to be one single arc for the story, or whether I'm going to take that same lead character, and run him through just a bunch of different circumstances, that's the thing one of the many things I haven't figured out yet. And that's one of the things I'm going to have to do is do that work before I actually put fingers to keyboard to actually start.
So,
the story.
question, Ross.
Yes.
Are you a plotter or a pantser?
So I'm definitely a plotter.
I'm a pantser.
I
Okay.
tried being a pantser with this, and when I was 300 plus pages into it. Then in the first
it was
draft-
driving you crazy, right?
Well, what I was doing was I was writing along, and I was having a great time. This is going. I don't know where this is going. And so I literally wrote a note, put it in square brackets, said, I don't know what I'm doing with this chapter. I don't know where it's going, so I'm just going to stop, and I'm going to start another chapter. So I did. And I'm writing along, having a great time, and I don't know what I'm doing.
What was the plan again?
Yeah, well, there wasn't one. That was the problem, except that this was my master's degree thesis. And I was facing my thesis semester, and that's all I had left.
So you need to plot it out.
And I
before
was
you
saying,
finish.
boy, you need trouble. And so, yes, I went through and I built an outline, And then I went from 300-ish pages. Took the manuscript, set it here, took the outline, set it there, and started going page by page. And when it didn't fit, it went. I took out 183
But see,
pages.
those things that we do, like I've taken out the first 6 chapters
Yeah.
of another thing I've been working on, and suddenly it's so much better. The
Yeah.
beginning is so much
Yeah.
better, but I think those first 6 chapters were important for me to know
Yes.
who it was I was writing about.
Yes. Yes.
So just because I didn't keep them doesn't mean that it wasn't important.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Which one are you?
I'm an inveterate pantser.
Okay.
I
keep copious notes of all
I
the people.
make up people that I like,
Uh-huh.
and then I just turn them loose and let them tell
Right.
their story.
Yeah.
Right. It's
Yeah.
kind of like that. You know it's you, but it also feels like it's them taking over, sort
Mhm.
I think that speaks to the kind of series that you choose,
of.
though.
Maybe so.
Yeah.
If you're a plotter, I can see you doing the long 3-book story arc.
Yeah.
If, like me,
Yeah.
I don't plot anything,
Sure.
I'm much
Yeah.
better off with, here's the situation I'm going to throw at this group
Right.
of people
How are
now.
they going to get out
Yeah.
of
How are
this?
they going to get out of it?
Right.
The next book, here's another situation I'm going
Yeah.
to throw
Right.
at
I
these
do the
people.
exact same.
And I'm actually what I call a plotzer,
Okay.
where I'm a hybrid between a plotter and a pantser. I lay out an outline, but then I start whatever scene I'm writing that day, and my characters do whatever they darn well please.
Okay.
So, that makes it interesting and try to make it
I have
fit
a question
together.
for Diana. You have a co-author,
Yes.
and you are a pantser,
Yes.
which I respect entirely. That's my life. And what I want to know is if you keep some sort of world Bible or a character
Yes.
Bible that helps you.
Yes. I have several things that I keep track of every character, and when I go to the next book, I add things. And when someone dies, I make sure I say how they died. And when the world has changed, the blurred location has changed, I live on Google Maps because this is post-apocalyptic. We're still in America.
Yeah.
And geographical features don't really change that much unless there's a volcano or heaven knows what. So that I do try to keep track of where I am and all of the people in my stories. So I know exactly who they are, what they've done, where they've been, so I don't have to go reread everything.
Yeah,
Try
and
to
that's
remember.
helpful for a
Yeah.
plotter too, because
Yeah.
especially as the series gets longer and longer,
Right.
it's so easy to forget.
Yes.
I'm continually picking up 2 books ago. And, wait a minute, what was that name again?
Yeah.
Right. So if you keep that really does help you be organized, even if you just kind of put people in situations. And then in my head, there is like a place I'm going.
Yeah.
Like I know I'm going to go here,
Right.
but how we get there is going to be fun to find out. But let's do the panel.
Oh no!
I know it's fun, but I want to help these guys figure out how to turn your book into a series. So what do you do with your book that's different than if it's a standalone book that is actually going to turn into a series? What would you do what different things would you do?
Go ahead.
Not resolve every issue. I think I'm very character driven in my writing.
Mm-hmm.
So I can take this set of characters, and even if I resolve whatever problem they were working on, I've got them in a world where there's always going to be a new problem for
Right.
them to face.
Right.
But if you want to, I think, establish continuity between your stories and not just have them be a bunch of random tales
Books about the same
about the
people,
same people,
sorta.
you leave issues unresolved.
Yeah.
They may be interpersonal issues.
They can't be too big.
No, but so with mine, it's often relationship issues.
Right.
They get the bad guy.
Right.
But are these 2 characters going to get together?
Right.
Are these 2 characters who are feuding going to fall apart?
Right.
And that carries then over into the next
But
book.
as long as you don't do something like you leave a cliffhanger that's so obvious, you make the reader mad.
I hate that.
Yeah, I hate that too. So you cannot force me to read your next book. I quit you.
In my case, because this was totally unplanned, I'm learning, don't do that.
Right.
And so, as I was saying earlier, I'm going to have to figure out, A, what kind of series it's going to be, and then work out all of those kinds of things that you're talking about as far as what's going to be the story-worthy problem in each book, and if it's a continuing character series overall.
Or a continuing
and if it's a continuing
subject series.
Yeah, then that's a different sort of situation. And so what are the different situations that are going to happen in each book, and how do you connect them and all that? I just recently finished a book by a British writer by the name of John Brunner. And this is a book that dates back into the mid-'80s. It's called The Crucible of Time. And it looked like he didn't really know how to build this world that he was describing. He's taking this alien race and taking them from just past the Stone Age to being a spacefaring race over the course of one novel. And he took an interesting approach to it in that it's a series of 7 novellas or novelettes.
Okay. I did see that was
So which the concept was good, but his process of transitioning from one to the next, there was always this catastrophic thing that happened at the end of the last chapter of each novelette.
Did it make you mad?
It did.
See?
Because it was mainly because some of them felt so forced.
Yes, it makes me mad too.
I really struggled to get through it. It was a good example of, good, bad example. Don't do this. Because it was so hard to say, okay, sure, I can buy that. It's just, no, we're going to throw this meteor at this thing and boom, we're going to blow up civilization. It's going to take them, who knows how many years. And then they're going to come back and boom, we're in the next novella.
I don't like that either.
So, lesson learned. Don't do that.
You guys.
Yeah.
Whatever you do in your writing, don't force your reader.
Yeah.
It's like in D&D, if you're the DM, do not force your players down a certain path. They need to be free to make their own mistakes.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I have some notes here.
Okay.
And one of the things that I wrote down was if you're doing something in a common world, not a fantasy, but like in our world, don't put it in your book if it's dated. So, because then when you go back and you read it 7 years from now, you're going, oh, cringe. Oh, that's terrible. So don't put things in your novel that will date your books.
That can be really, really hard to do. This is a near future series.
Right.
And so, how do I anticipate
you can't.
What's the world going to look like in 2035?
But you're not going to say, oh, it was the year 1920, 2022. You're not going to say what year it is necessarily.
I actually did.
Okay. Well, that makes it harder though.
It does. It really does, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I suggest going forward.
Farther, yes.
Farther.
Yeah.
Right.
Farther enough that you'll be dead before
Yeah.
you're proved wrong.
Yeah.
Possibly.
That does make it
And
easier, absolutely.
I do agree avoiding exact dates.
Right, exact dates, exact
You
places.
if you were working in near future, you can do that without saying, it was 2025
Right.
or whatever. It's just,
You
it's
can
clearly
say
there's
it's
enough
the future.
recognition that
Right.
this is,
Yeah.
I mean, you talk about J.D. Robb.
Right. Her starting year was 2058.
Right.
Mm.
But again, it's not, it's close enough that it's recognizable.
And
Yes.
you can see how the world could progress to there.
Yes.
Even if I'm reading Naked in Death right now, the first book, I can still see that this could possibly come to pass.
Mhm.
I think if you get farther afield, my science fiction series is set sometime in the future.
Right. If
Yeah.
you're
When-
a little more vague, it's
When the solar
The
system is
ages
totally colonized and,
right.
okay, when would that happen? I don't know.
We don't know. It
Yeah.
could happen.
Well, I am the A+ student. I will ask many questions. I'm so
Good.
sorry.
Please do.
No,
And
that's
Scott has
Makes it easier
questions
for
Oh,
us.
good.
I was just wondering if you made that rule after you wrote this book, which is basically a travel log of northern Arizona.
It's not just northern Arizona, it's also Colorado.
Oh, right. But you can almost follow that trip on a car.
You can. And that's the Google Maps part. Because I wanted to make sure these were real roads that you could.
Yeah.
Would this possibly have washed out after 2 years? Probably. So they would have to find a walk around or something. And when I first read it and I said no, there were dates. And it's like, no, we're not doing that.
Yeah.
We have to do something different. And you were going to say something.
Oh, it makes me think of Octavia Butler's Parable of the Sower, which is like set nowish. Which is, I mean, they're such
Nowish.
brilliant books. And when I read them originally, I thought, oh man, in 20 years, like, do I feel like that's going to happen? Oh. But now we're living through this time.
That actually
Is very close. And
Right.
so it feels almost like maybe you need to have a little prescience if you're going to be too specific in your dates.
can't be. You can't. And so, like, actual places, okay, so you wrote about this actual place, and now it's 7 years later, and someone goes, where is that actual place? Oh, it closed.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you can't, unless you later say it closes, it's better to have fictional places as well, just to preserve your sense of time, you know?
Or at least rename the place. Because there are a lot of
Right.
real places
Right, I have.
in this series, but some of them are. Well, there's a church in Raleigh, North Carolina. That church really exists, but I have completely renamed it.
Right.
You know, people can figure out where it is. But
These
it's not the
books have
First Baptist
actual.
Church.
These books have
Yeah.
actual places.
Yeah,
But, you know, you still have to say, okay, now it's 7 years after.
right.
What would it really look
Yeah.
like? What would have happened? Were there wildfires? Were there, you know, what kind of changes have happened?
Sure.
So it's
Yes.
like you can't really have all seeing eyes, but.
I think I'm just too lazy for that.
Oh,
I either invent my own world and I
Right.
can make it whatever I want it to be,
Right.
Yeah.
or I go so far in the future that
You're sick.
if I mention the city of Chicago,
It's a different
it's
place.
a different place now.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, exactly.
I did that with one book, and I regretted it. I set it in Chicago, a city I know very well, and did a bunch of stuff, only to go to Chicago and find out that
All those places.
all that places has changed. They remodeled the streets. What did they do?
Well, but the thing is, a lot of readers are also lazy and won't check.
Oh yeah, I
But
know.
then you'll also have readers that go, hey, that's not right.
Oh.
And they'll say, your firearms stuff here was wrong. Well, I
Yeah.
make sure that it's not wrong because I know
Yeah.
a lot of people that use firearms, including myself.
There will always be
Yes.
those people.
It's like, okay, well, choose another book.
Yeah.
No one is
Yeah.
forcing you to read this one.
Yeah.
So good luck.
Choose another author. I
Have
don't
fun.
mind.
Well,
Okay.
the other thing you run into is you write something and the 10-year-old asks, well, why didn't you just use a cell phone?
Yeah, because, you know, there aren't any anymore.
Yeah.
You know, the next thing I had was character's age. I find that you want to be a little loose and free with the ages.
Unless
you're
it's
gonna-
important.
Yeah, so you have to decide, are you going to follow their exact age? And if you're, 10 books in, now they're 50? Or are you going to just do a few months apart for each book? I mean, you have to decide how that's going to work. Are they going to age? Are they going to die? You know, what happens then? Is the series going to continue with
Right.
someone else in their family?
Yeah.
So you either have to play loose with the age and not really, mention what their age is or how much they've aged. And you've got readers going, okay, this is book 17 and they're still 30.
Yeah.
How is
Their
that?
eventful life.
Right.
Yeah.
How did that happen?
Yeah.
Again,
Well,
that kind of can depend on the time frame over which that particular story is taking place. So most of my current novels take place over the course of a few days to a week.
Okay, right. So then the next book can be the next month.
Right.
Right. So that's what J.D. Robb does too.
Yeah.
So she's got like 45 books. And it's only been a few years.
And in my case, the stories take place over a 5-year period. And ages were important to identify for the characters.
Right. So that means
So-
they're going to age realistically.
Absolutely, yeah.
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 You have to do that.
Yeah.
So then that means when you get to your next, if you're going to do more than 3,
No!
It was so painful the first time.
Which is scary because there is the door is still open a crack,
There's a chance.
but not. Please, not soon. I still want to
Okay.
move on.
So why do people read our books? Because it's escapism, really, right?
Mm.
Don't we read them for enjoyment? Do we not want to punish our readers? So I just feel like, we need to make them enjoyable enough that you want to reread them. I was going to put in a rant here about the Foundation series. Because when I was like 13 and I first read it, it was in the 70s, and it was great. I loved it so much. It was so sciencey, and Harry Seldon was so smart, and I just loved it. So I thought, well, they're coming out with a series, so I'm going to reread it. And I found myself cringing so much. And I know it was written in, 52?
It was written in the 50s.
Yeah. And it was just painful.
The problem there, though,
so
is
hard.
that you can't predict how people's attitudes and social mores are going to change. We all, we all write from a point of view that is essentially frozen in time.
It's true.
And is probably frozen in time at a much younger age than you are at right now.
Right.
Okay, that's just the way it is. That is a truism of social media theory, and that's how the brain works.
And I know that in the 50s, it was after the war, and they wanted the men to be in charge again. And I know that that is part of it, and I did enjoy it, but I can't anymore, and it's very hard. It's very hard for me to find a series I adored. It's horrible.
If I may be the nosy girl that I am, I think as a storyteller, I do improvisational storytelling mostly, but I also interview a lot of authors and host a lot of authors for my live podcast that I do. And one of the things I think is really critical for me as a reader of series is that just because you live in an age and it's sort of like, this is the time perspective I'm writing from, your authors, you can be bigger than the era you're writing in. So what we're writing in the 2020s, like, if you're cutting out half of the population, like, you're doing it wrong, in my opinion.
There was one woman in the first Foundation book. She was the wife of someone, and she was a bitch. She was horrible.
Yeah.
And it's like, that is not representation of the human race.
I used to be into the Piers Anthony Xanth series.
Yeah, we were talking about that earlier.
I started to reread it again. I got a Skull for Chameleon, and I was like, wait a minute, I totally forgot that her whole thing was that when she was beautiful, she was stupid, and when she was ugly, she was smart.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know.
You could say the same thing, though, about any of the classic works. And you go back now and read Dune. You read H.B. Piper, which is even worse if you're going to take our frame of reference and impose it on his.
It won't break my memories of the enjoyment I had from the books, but it is disheartening, and it makes me really be aware, when you're writing something, you kind of gotta be evolved, I guess.
Except that you don't know what it will be in another 30 or 40 years. And people may read your stuff and go,
I know, it's true.
But Mr. Davis, I do disagree with you a little bit, because there are many authors from the past who, when they looked forward from where they were at, they extrapolated not just from the technology, but also the social mores and the world around them.
Oh, I'm not saying they didn't. I'm just saying not to interrupt, and I apologize.
Mm-hmm.
If you enjoyed the book at the time, you can look at it for all its flaws and still enjoy the book.
I enjoy the memories I had of the book, but now I can't really enjoy the book.
I can buy into that.
Yeah.
I guess what I was trying to say is that we are all doing that, whether we wish to or not. Yes, there were authors in the 50s who wrote very, very forward-looking books. people don't like Heinlein particularly, but you can't say he didn't write strong female characters.
He did.
Sometimes.
Okay.
I definitely have my critiques of him, but
Well,
I'm not
again-
the panelist.
But again, I'm saying I agree with you. There were authors who anticipated a lot of the things that we now find just the way the world ought to be. I guess what I'm arguing for is a contextual understanding of the times in which they were written and the audience that they were written for.
Even the women writers at that time were constrained by that social structure that they were born into. And it's hard. It was harder for women writers to break out and have more, a more open opinion. But it's happening.
Yeah.
It's happening. So that was interesting. That was a good conversation. Let me see what else do I have. I think that's it. Yeah, that's it.
My question to the other panelists, and this is from my perspective of writing a series of standalones, essentially. How do you keep from telling the same story
You gotta keep
over and
track
over
of
and over
it.
again?
Well, that's true.
Not just the same story as the story, but you've got to keep the tone fresh, even when you're doing the continuous series. You've got to keep your characters consistent and the world consistent.
Yeah.
But time is going by.
Yeah.
And how do you avoid the trap of essentially telling that same story again in a different form?
Yeah.
You have to have
that's-
new challenges, new things that you're facing. We don't have gas anymore. It all went bad after 2 years. How do we get around now?
Yeah.
Oh, someone figured out how to recycle plastic and make a really crude diesel. Okay. Or you got horses. Or whatever it is. You just got to make the world change as your character and have your characters grow.
Yeah.
That's right.
I guess that's what I was leading up
Yeah.
to.
Yeah.
Because for me, the way that the type of things I write, like J.D. Robb, you're going to tend to encounter the same situations over and over again. Her strength is that her characters, and particularly her secondary characters, which are the ones I really love, grow and change, and the relationships change. And that, to me, that's really the attraction of that series.
Character. So building strong characters that aren't cookie cutters, that have flaws, that have personalities, that grow, that learn, that age, that change. That brings people back. That brings people back again and
the
again.
new situations that they're facing bring out new flaws, new things that they have to deal with within themselves.
Right.
That, not only does that challenge you as the writer, but it also gives the reader that added experience of seeing, oh, this is something about this character that I didn't know before.
Right.
How are they going to deal with that? Yeah.
Right. You start out with the young character, has all these hopes and dreams. They all get crushed. All of these bad things happen. Are they going to just sink into despair? Are they going to fight their way out? Are they going to just roll along?
Yeah.
How are they going to react?
And how does this new situation force them to respond in a way that's different from what they had to the last time? Scott, you had a question.
I just actually wanted to point out, because you reminded me of it in your question, there's actually a fourth type of series where the world or universe is actually the main character, like Terry Pratchett or Jordan Dickinson.
That's true.
Okay.
Terry, what is that called? Discworld?
Discworld.
Yeah.
Discworld.
Where the main character is Discworld. That's really good. I didn't think of it. Maybe it could be a Discworld too.
Oh yeah, it's also Xantha. Because Xantha is also the world, and then
right, and they just have different characters in each book. As much as we go,
Thank you, Scott. I'm writing that down.
That's really good.
I do think Discworld is a great example of someone who wrote something over decades, and you can read those early books, and it's not cringy. I don't read them in 2021 and go, gosh, Pratchett, whew, you had a very backwards view of the world.
Well, I think that once you hit about in the 70s, I think you hit the 70s, and people could start to see things were changing. The world is changing whether you want it or not. You can go in kicking and screaming to the new world, or you can just go with it and sell more books, because people aren't going to continue to, I suppose Asimov still sells books, and I still love iRobot, and I still love the robot novels. I'm just really mad at the Foundation series right now. I listened to it on audio during my commute, and I had it turned up to 150%. And one other thing I did don't be mad, okay? I pretended all the men were gay. And that made it better for me because then it was like, okay, it's the gay overlords and they're just in charge. It's okay. All right. I get it now. That made it better for me and I'm sorry. But
Secretly, it was happening on Fire Island all the time.
I do have a grudge against it, but it's okay.
One thing, you're talking like you can predict the future a little more.
You try.
I've attended enough different panels about science fiction predicting the future.
Mm-hmm.
And when you look back at the predictions,
I know.
the details were ungodly different.
Right?
You got to put it at this really high level to say,
Okay, but look
he
at
predicted this.
Yeah, but look at Star Trek. Look at Star Trek. It invented iPads.
Yeah.
It invented cell phones.
Yeah.
Well,
I
except
mean,
I've got a friend who
basically.
claims that there wasn't an original idea in Star Trek.
Well,
That in effect, he stole well.
From a plot
he's
perspective,
welcome to
that's
his
true.
opinion.
absolutely.
I know where he's coming from because I think what Star Trek did was expose a much wider audience to
Yes.
some of these things that had been science fiction tropes for quite a while.
Right.
Because, you had things like personal communicators and a functional iPad in novels written in the 50s and 60s, long before Star Trek.
Right, but people didn't always
Exactly.
read that.
What Star
like,
Trek
it's
did
full.
was take those things that the readers in this genre knew about and put them on the screen. And that was my reaction. The first time they pulled out the communicator, I know what that is. Somebody finally made one.
And my grandma was such a science fiction fan, she totally got me into it when I was little and young and malleable. And she would be tickled to be able to see me reading a book on a tablet, or just pulling any movie I want out of the air and watching it. And the way that they thought it would happen is different, but it's still so cool to me that we live in the future now.
Yeah.
Yes, but where's my flying car?
Exactly.
I want the hoverboard.
Right?
I watch people drive on streets. I don't want them to have cars.
As somebody who has
I want to be the
flown-
only one with a flying car.
Right.
Yeah.
That was,
It's my flying
well,
car.
they kind of have one now. It's like a plane that turns into a car, sort of.
Yeah, those things
Yeah.
are come and gone.
They're
It's
really
just-
expensive.
Yeah.
The latest
Yeah.
one, I think, is an iteration out of Honda
Right.
Yeah.
Yes, that's
that is maybe one that might catch on, but at a couple $100,000
Right.
a copy, it's not going to be for everybody.
Okay,
Yeah.
well, not yet.
Yeah.
But,
Maybe.
you know,
We'll see. I
Yeah.
don't
I
know.
think
But
the
Bruce
thing
is-
they're pushing so hard right now, electric cars. These 1,500 miles to my relatives in Washington State.
Yeah.
How
Yeah.
many times am I going to have to stop and recharge?
How many
Right.
times do you have to stop and fill up your tank?
If I could recharge with the
Easily
speed I fill up my
3
tank,
days.
it
Yep.
wouldn't be a problem.
That's right.
And they
Yeah.
have real fast rechargers now. There's a carbon battery they're coming out with that recharges very quickly, and it doesn't degrade like lithium. And you have a lot more recharges, but that's like in the future still.
Yeah.
See, the
And
technology we
in
could
rural
do
Utah.
now for that, just as an aside,
Right.
is just like you go to Kmart or whatever and exchange your Blue Rhino gas cylinder
Mhm.
for your grill.
Right.
You pull in, they drop the battery out of the bottom, slap a new one in.
Right.
You don't own your battery, you're just renting your
Right,
battery
just
from.
like the propane.
Yeah,
Yeah.
That's
exactly.
an idea.
Yeah.
That's
Wait.
a possible future world.
I would say though, like if you drive through West Texas, you better plan your gas stations.
Yeah.
So I have no problem thinking about planning my electric charge stop.
Right.
Yeah.
You're a Texan.
I mean, we try not to talk about it, but yes.
You also have to remember, when the car was first invented,
Yeah.
it couldn't go more than 30 miles an hour and needed a special person to be able to fix it.
Right.
as it went on.
And there were gas stations everywhere either.
That's right.
Right.
Yeah. So the infrastructure built out, and the same thing will happen with electric cars. It's coming already, but it's just going to take time to do
It
it.
always seems to take longer. But then I look at my life and the things that my great grandmother would have loved to have and think, okay, it's okay. It's all right. We're getting there.
Yeah.
Well, one thing they've got that I am so happy about is better anesthetics for dental work.
Oh my
Good.
God.
Oh, God, it's better.
Yeah, it's so much better.
Not sure what that has to do with series.
Well,
however.
the future.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
again,
It's the
I think it
future.
goes back to the point of if you are going to set something in a near future recognizable world,
Right.
it is much, much more difficult.
It is,
Yes.
and you have to really be careful with your locations, your dates. You don't want dates. You don't want, oh, Trump is president and this happens. You know, you can't really.
Those kinds of details.
You
need
can't
to-
put those in
do it,
there, or it's gonna mess you up later.
And it also depends on how quickly you're able to produce the books. I have been extremely slow in getting my books out. So the kinds of things that I put in the Eternity Play, I thought, ooh, this is really futuristic. Some of that stuff is here now.
Right.
Yeah, and you know,
it's hard. How do you tell?
That's one of the risks.
It is.
On the flip side, in the third book, Wildspread, there's an AI in the protagonist's genetics lab.
Okay, so things.
But I didn't think of that. You know, there was talk of artificial
but the
intelligences and
AIs
that
were
kind
like-
of stuff
Yeah.
back in 2004 when I started
Right,
the
but
series.
it was not.
It was not like what
like
it
what
is
we
now. Yeah, and so you know, you will miss things. It's just guaranteed. And the slower
is.
you are at getting books out, the more that you're going to miss. Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
I guess if you
The
can get them out
one
every
thing on
6
that
months.
that I'm
Yeah.
not sure about, even when they talked to AI in the years previous, they didn't talk about self-programming.
Mhm.
Oh, I know, that's scary. It's
Yeah.
not scary?
No, it's scary. I'm
Oh.
like, no.
Yeah.
No.
But
Never
it's-
Hagen's Berserkers.
I always get really interested when people are like, no. And I'm like, why? Because you're going to treat the robots badly and you know they're going to kill you? Because I'm always nice to my Alexa. I always thank that girl for helping me. Thank you.
I mean, I don't want the Terminator rule. I don't know. No. Keep the words in.
That was kind of the topic of one of the other panels was, you know, why do we have this trope of the AIs take over, they immediately do something like
'Cause it's
wipe humanity
terrifying.
out? Yeah, exactly.
That's
you know,
why.
science fiction in particular and horror and
Well,
to
yeah,
some
and
degree
there's
fantasy
like-
have always played on our fears.
Right.
Yeah.
That's the next
I
panel. Are you in
found-
the next panel?
No.
Oh. It's a horror, what the social commentary is in
Right.
And it's like there
Yeah.
is.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, the thing I always found the Robot series by Asimov frightening.
It is.
The last thing I
But I
want
like
is a
scary.
robot who's going to make me perfectly safe.
Right. You're dead and now you're really safe.
Not even
We'll
dead.
lock you up
I mean,
and you'll
I
never
think it
get
was
out.
Stanley Schmitz wrote a short story, well, not Hugo or Nebula, back in the 60s called With Folded Hands.
Uh-huh.
And he took the 3 laws of robotics to its extreme.
Right.
Oh.
And,
And
it's
we all had our
terrifying.
personal robot that did everything for us, and all we were expected to do was sit in the corner with our hands folded.
Because now
Because
you're
even
safe.
walking was dangerous. You might fall
You
down.
could get hurt.
Of course, I have another question because I'm incorrigible. So, what is a series that is a more modern series that's come out now that you think is really an excellent exemplar of how to handle series writing? Because we've talked a lot about old books that were written before some of us were born. So, like, the last 5-10
The Nettie
years.
Okorafor series, Binti.
Yes.
I love that so much.
Yeah.
And N.K. Jemisin is
Oh.
way future world. Oh my gosh, that was really good.
The Fifth Gate was for sure.
Broken
but-
Earth, I think it's called.
Yeah, she
Yeah, the
wasn't
Broken
my
Earth
cup of
series.
tea, but I can.
I really
I-
got
I-
it. Took a
right.
while for me to get into
It-
it and understand the world.
Yeah.
But once I did, it was like, oh, I get it now.
Binti would be my
Oh my
choice
gosh.
for what's
That was so
really
good.
contemporary and very good.
Yes, I loved that.
Can you repeat that name?
Binti, it's Nnedi Okorafor is the author, but the first book is called Binti.
The Afrofuturism.
Yes,
No.
it was so good though. Besides yours, which ones do you say?
Well, outside
I
the
don't
genre
really-
of science fiction and fantasy, we already mentioned J.D. Robb.
Yeah, she lasts forever.
I read a lot of detective fiction, and I think there's some very good series there.
The Trey series, is that good?
It is, yes.
Okay.
I'm a fan of Michael Connelly and the Bosch series, not
Yeah.
just because of the TV
I know
show.
Bosch is a little bit misogynistic, but I
Oh,
still
he's very misogynistic.
but I
Well, not a little bit.
Okay, good.
That's Bosch.
I still
There's,
enjoy it because he does get his sometimes,
But-
you know?
but again, looking at things in context, that is the character.
Yeah.
The other series that I love is Elmore Leonard's
Oh, yeah.
series about Raylan, and that was made into the show Justified.
Right.
Now, you talk about a really misogynistic, out there character.
Yeah.
You know, he doesn't fit in the world anymore.
No, but it's interesting to watch him try.
Yeah.
That was what was good about that. What about you?
I don't have a good choice. Unfortunately, so much of my reading is off in other
Sciencey stuff.
not necessarily. It's just kind of all over the place right now. So I don't have a good current series that I can point to.
Okay. That's okay. We still like you.
I was worried.
Oh, no, you were. Yes.
I don't know if you guys have heard of him, but Jonathan Moeller, he does a lot. Child of Ghosts. It's basically like fantasy D&D-esque, but it follows the same character, and she is one of the Emperor's spies and like hunts down rogue magicians. It's a really interesting world. Like if you practice pyromancy, you will go insane because working with fire makes you crazy apparently.
Okay, that's cool.
But yeah, it's a
I
really,
mean, you have the benefit, and then you have the problem
Right,
that comes
and
with it.
I think it's a lot like your type of series in that, you follow the same character, but the stories are standalone. She has a new problem, she solves it, and then it goes on. And they do kind of build on each other.
Yeah.
But yeah, so
Let's hope it goes forever. It sounds good. For a while. Anybody else have any good series we should read?
If you like the detective fiction, Tana French, the Dublin Murder Squad.
Yeah.
And it's an interesting world because it's like a minor character in one book will become
the major character in that.
protagonist
Yeah.
in the next.
I
And the
haven't
stories are
read them.
really-
I'm aware of them.
they're
That's
excellent.
kind of on the list
Yeah,
after
they're
we
really
get through.
good.
I'm down a research rabbit hole now from my
Yeah.
current office. It's really hard to read things.
Sure.
For pleasure. Yeah.
I read so many books. But the pandemic really kind of knocked me down. Not because I got sick. I just got so much executive dysfunction. It was very hard to be creative. But it's helped when I got my vax and I felt like I could be myself again. Does anybody else feel like that? I
Yeah.
don't know.
Absolutely.
My experience would have been totally different because my entire job.
Yeah.
I'm a trauma and critical care surgeon.
That's okay.
So
that's hard.
I was totally
You're-
on front
Right,
line.
but you're used to being.
Again, that's my
Right.
point.
Yeah.
My life is stress.
Going to my doctor was really good because he's like, we're not afraid of you. If you have COVID, it's okay. We won't get sick. And it was like, it just made everything better, just going to my regular appointments. But it was really hard because I still had to go to work. My boss insisted nobody wear a mask. So it was just a very stressful time.
Yeah, and my situation was different again because things really didn't change for me. I am a writer now, and so I was staying at home doing my writing.
Just like you normally would.
When the pandemic hit, the things that changed were the in-person meetings that I had been going to all moved online. But other than that, I was staying at home writing just as I had been staying at home writing.
The sad commentary on my life is my social life changed not at all.
And I felt totally enclosed, and I'm a social person.
Yeah.
And I love people, and I love coming to conventions and doing things, and it just made me feel like not myself anymore.
That was the one thing I did miss.
Yeah.
Was being in places
In
like
person.
this.
Yes. Yes.
This kind of spontaneous give and take just doesn't
Yes.
exist in an online meeting.
No.
And
It can't.
Yeah.
One of the women in my critique group is that way, where it really hurt her
I mean, I
to
never
not
thought.
be able to interact with people face to face like we're doing now.
Well, so at least I had work, but it was scary. And my boss did get COVID, but I did not.
Okay.
So I mean, yeah, there's everybody goes through stuff.
Yeah.
I don't know. I've never had writer's block before in my life. It was the weirdest
Wow.
feeling.
One of the things that was weird to me is there's 2-3 groups that some we meet first and some we wouldn't. But you suddenly find out that 1, 2, 3 people in the group are either really bothered by the risk of catching COVID or have immune problems where decided
You can't
they
take
could
that.
not come to the meetings in person
Right.
anymore.
And then you're afraid for your friends. I know. I'm sorry. This is now a COVID support group for the rest of the evening.
I mean, every convention is like this. It's all support, COVID support.
Yeah. Right now.
Yeah.
It'll get better, I hope.
We collectively went through a trauma.
Yeah.
Yeah, we did.
So
Still going through it.
Oh, yeah.
We were talking about
We're not out yet.
we are trauma bonded for life, though.
Every
And when
TV
does
show
the
in
next
1920
variety
or
come
2020 or 2021
Sorry, yeah.
is obvious what year it is.
It's not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It
dangerous.
is.
Yeah. Like it took it went through like
How did
hell.
the years carry it and it's never been going?
Oh, that's
Yeah,
exciting.
that was like yesterday's big bombshell.
what?
Deer are COVID
Oh,
reservoirs.
COVID will never go
It's
away.
never
Well, it's
going
like
away.
the flu.
It
Yeah.
will never ever
Yeah.
go away because it
It's
jumped
now
from
here.
animal to
Yep.
person.
Exactly.
The only viruses or diseases that we even could dream of eliminating are diseases where humans are the only vector.
Right.
And the only one we've really been successful with is smallpox.
Although
And that's because there is no animal vector for smallpox. There are others that we're getting close.
but now there's so many anti-vaxxers. It's really weird.
Well, those people,
That can be kind of a self-correcting problem.
I know.
Yeah, well, but
It's
again,
hard to say.
It's
the-
hard to say that, but it's so true, and it's like you guys.
It's
those-
easier.
but those people, no, those people
Talking
are
passion fatigue.
to
Yeah.
take a slightly different take on that. Those people are focusing on a very tiny risk of a bad thing
Right.
happening.
Right.
So, how many people in here would not get diagnostic X-rays done because of the radiation?
I mean, we're
You know
all,
how many?
we're all vaccinated.
Let's put
or
it
you
this way: if you
wouldn't
have
be.
children, would you allow your child to have a CAT scan?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm talking to the choir.
Right.
For a kid to get an excess cancer from a CAT scan would require something like 8,000 CAT scans
Yeah.
to get enough millisievert exposure to cause a cancer. At my age, 20,000 CAT scans. Who's going to get 20,000 CAT scans?
Yeah.
But these people have focused on this one small
One
risk.
problem.
Total aggregate risk of a bad event from the COVID-19 vaccine is about 0.3%. Okay? Your risk of dying in your car whenever you drive to work is 0.1%.
Yeah.
Okay? We don't worry about driving. Why would we worry about COVID? Well, these people have
It's
decided that this is scary. This is something they don't understand. And it's a cognitive dissonance. It's taken over their brain, and no amount of persuasion is
No.
going to convince them.
It's
Either it's the
true.
political.
Well, some of it's
Decision.
political, and
Yeah.
that feeds into it, and
Yes.
that's the worst part of it,
Yeah.
because you've allowed that then to become an acceptable thing within a certain group.
Yeah.
And that's the travesty of it all.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
But-
I feel
but
like
you
you've
can't
had this
say-
conversation before as a
Yeah.
doctor.
Yeah.
You seem very well informed.
We have
I
2
am-
minutes.
Yes.
We have 2 minutes, so any questions, COVID or non-COVID or series related?
Series related. Let's get back to the topic.
Yeah.
I'd like to make a recommendation for reading,
Okay.
especially for you, since you do post-apocalyptic writing. Kit Roca's Mercenary Librarians is delightful.
Okay, you've got to send me that link.
I will.
Okay.
Post-apocalyptic, 2 people writing
I
it.
love post-apocalyptic.
And it's librarians taking on the bad guy.
I like that. I will read that. For
It's very
100%. Did you have something?
Yeah.
Yeah, more of just a comment. How would you feel about a series that was like an A to Z theme?
And like the A is for alibi,
Yeah,
B
like
is for burglar, because that was a Sue Grafton.
attacking Annie, beating
Sure,
something.
do
Like,
it.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
don't know.
take your thing and
Okay.
do it, baby.
You know, whatever spurs you and inspires you to keep that thing going.
Right.
Yeah,
And you know
why
what?
not?
My motto is write something you want to read.
Yes.
Because I read a lot. I read a lot of different things, and I wrote books that I like to read.
Virtually every book I've ever written has been, why hasn't somebody written this book yet?
Right?
Yeah.
I'll do it myself.
There's
So
such
be
a
the
little
book
arrogance.
you want to see in the world. Write that book.
I mean, it's written
I'm not sure
already. I
this
just wanted to
is-
make sure I was a big
You're doing it really. You're doing good.
Thanks.
I think that sounds fun.
Remember it too.
I don't like. I thought about that in later books, but I just want it to like when you have it on the spine, it just be like A, B, C, D.
Yeah.
Sure.
Are you a plotter?
For this actually, I mean, like I tried dancing it, and then
I
I'm a
thought
very
so.
wonderful manager.
Okay, well that's it. So if you want, you can stay here and see and do the horror movie one, which is really, really good. It's horror as social commentary. I know James is on this, right? Are you on this panel?
What's horror social commentary? Oh, wait, I know.
You're doing
I'm
this
not
one,
reading.
right?
Yeah.
Oh, good. Good. He's
And
got
some of us
the,
will be doing panels and such tomorrow too, so please come back.
Thank you for listening to the Creative Play and Podcast Network. And feel free to enjoy our other shows, such as D&D Journey of the 5th Edition and Scion Ragnarok and Roll, a Scion hero to Ragnarok story. Thank you for listening.